Hello and welcome to week 4 of the online exchange, which, as you know, focuses on the Environmental and Social Safeguards Framework, or the ESSF. Today's session takes a look at risk assessment and the introduction to the ESSF screening tool, which will help to familiarize yourself with this step in applying the safeguards into the work you do on the ground in your landscape and seascape. My name is Nathalie Simoneau and I am based in WWF US, and I will take you through and introduce you to the Environmental and Social Safeguards Framework screening tool today. Let's begin. What is the ESSF screening tool? This is the first step in the process of identifying and ultimately mitigating risks associated with WWF's on-the-ground activities in landscapes and seascapes. The purpose of the screening tool is essentially to take an in-depth look into the activities that WWF implements on the ground in a given landscape or seascape, to help surface any risks that may be associated with these activities, and to subsequently develop appropriate mitigation plans to address any risks that are surfaced. How are landscapes and seascapes defined to apply the ESSF? The term landscape or seascape is used to capture the set of projects and activities where WWF resources are provided in a defined geographical area in the form of technical assistance or physical investments such as infrastructure, technology, and equipment, or financing, and to bring about changes in skills, behaviors, and or practices of institutions and or individuals. If we look further into how landscapes or seascapes are defined for the purpose of applying the safeguards, it is important to understand that a landscape or a seascape may be part of an existing larger landscape or may cross borders, such as the Tridom or the TNS landscape in the Congo Basin. For the purpose of applying the ESSF to a landscape, it is important to have a landscape lead and a country office. Therefore, in the case of TNS landscape, the safeguards will be applied separately to each landscape within the TNS, which means that Lubeke and Tangasanga landscape are applying their respective ESSF, even if they encounter similar risks and implement similar activities. This is to ensure accountability in the respective country and to take into account differences in the context in which each landscape operates. The next two slides will give you a brief overview of each section in the screening tool, with an explanation on the purpose of these different sections in a step-by-step manner. But first, let's look at who is responsible to fill in the screening tool. When working on your screening tool, it's good to remember that this is not an exercise to be done in isolation, but rather it is a process of exchange and dialogue between the team members in the landscape or seascape, including the person responsible to and accountable to fill in the screening tool, the landscape lead. This person is supported by staff knowledgeable in the landscape or seascape context, and may also engage with the main implementing partners in the landscape who may be working on activities and have invaluable information on the implementation of these activities in the landscape, and always keeping in discussion and engagement with the WWF Safeguards reviewer, who is the person designated to support your landscape. The goal here is to ensure the most complete and detailed final product. Following that, we move into the different parts of the screening tool. Part 1 consists of recording data on landscape and seascape project being reviewed. Why is this first step important? This step actually provides a brief description and history of WWF's engagement in the landscape, explaining key objectives, successes and challenges, opportunities, and also its relevance for WWF's global goals. This part 1 includes important points. One that is very important is the landscape or seascape strategies, which includes the categorization of all the activities that are funded by WWF, which will serve as the basis for the risk assessment later on down into the screening tool. Next, there is a section that provides information on an estimated budget over the next 5 years with a list of donors and funding sources. The fifth point in part 1 deals with stakeholder engagement. WWF is rolling out the application of the ESSF in landscapes and seascapes where there is already plenty of work going on. The steps in collecting information on the engagement with stakeholders going back 2 years is very important to document all the work that has been done and that continues to be done, and to gather documents and on how the project has engaged with stakeholders in the past and currently. This is in view of developing a stakeholder engagement plan for the landscape and to build on the work that already is being done, engaging with stakeholders and helping to address gaps that may be identified in this process of engaging with stakeholders. Next, we move into part 2, which is a section that consists of an initial screening to identify areas of work that carry the highest and the lowest levels of risk. This section has 2 tables with a list of activities in each table. The first table consists of the list of excluded activities, which are activities that are very high risk and in which WWF should not engage. The second table is a list of activities that carry very little to no risk, and if your project is solely limited to the following, to these types of activities, such as desk studies, workshops, capacity building, workshops and meetings, remote sensing, geospatial analysis, etc., then no further screening is required, as these activities provide little to no risk, environmental and social risks. So, however, for the first table, if a yes is identified beside any of the activities on that list, it should alert the team to redesign the project or try to eliminate altogether the activity that has been identified as an excluded activity. The next 2 parts, parts 3 and 4, deal with the bulk of the screening tool really addressing the questions and identifying the risks associated with the various activities implemented in the landscape. Part 3 involves areas of work not identified in Part 2, and Part 4 is actually assessing the potential impacts that the activities of the landscape may have from the existing WWF environmental and social standards. As WWF rolls out the ESSF across the network, as mentioned before, the safeguards are being applied to landscapes or seascapes where work is already ongoing. Filling in the screening tool and answering these questions about the standards and identifying where risks may be present will help the landscape and seascape teams reflect on the work they are already doing to address those risks and the plans that they have put in place and the actions that they have conducted, which already may help mitigate some of these risks. And it will also help to identify where there may be gaps in mitigating these types of risks that can be addressed with applying the safeguards framework and developing the appropriate plans for these risks. I have taken you through a very quick overview of what the ESSF screening tool is about, how this is the basis for getting started on the road to identifying and ultimately mitigating the risks associated with your activities implemented on the ground at the landscape and seascape level. Please follow the link below and explore the screening tool to familiarize yourself with it. We look forward to a fruitful discussion on the sharing platform about the application of the screening tool in your own landscape and seascape. See you there. Thank you.